This clip shows the table runner after the side pieces have been added and the basting stitches are removed. The rest of the video is about folding and sewing the sashes in place. I'm kind of new to patchwork, and sometimes my edges aren't as even as I'd like. So I like to cover them with a strip of contrast fabric, which makes a nice contrast when this edge rolls over with the rest of the quilt. So I just simply cut inch strips of fabric, fold them over about 1/4 of an inch, lay them on top of my quilt, and stitch them down so they look straight all around all the pieces. Blue thread on the top, cream thread on the back. This table runner has most of the blue border applied around all the patchwork pieces. I have one more set of borders to put on each side here. You can notice how there are borders on the top and the bottom. To position the border, lay it next to the fabric with the folded side facing the center of the patchwork piece. The raw edges of the border should be facing the sash. I'm going to complete the blue border by pinning the last 2 strips in place and sewing from top to bottom and securing my threads. I happen to pull them through and tie them in a knot. You can backstitch if you like, just make sure they don't pull out. I have my piece pinned in place. I just want you to know I only stitch along the side closest to the patchwork. I don't worry about this raw edge. It's going to be covered, and this piece that forms the sash will hold the raw edges in place and keep them flat. When all the borders are in place, I trim them, and then I also cut them on a diagonal around all of the beveled edges. So by that I mean I cut a diagonal this way. Not a deep one, just enough to get them out of the way so I can see my markings, because I'm going to fold these edges over and stitch them closed as the last step of making this table runner. So I want these out of my way, and if they're pushing into the stitching line at all, depending on how far they are in, sometimes I'll trim them out of the way of the stitching line. Yeah, this one might need some trimming right here. I'm going to use 1/4 inch wide double stick washout basting tape. It comes in rolls, you can get it on Amazon, and I'm going to use scissors that are not fabric scissors to cut it because it can get sticky and mess things up. I only need 1 piece of basting tape for each beveled edge, but I'm going to zoom in on this one and show you how it's positioned. When applying the double stick tape, there are 2 marks that you should consider. One is you want one edge of the double stick tape to be along one of these lines that you drew, halfway up and going at least a little past the dots, but not all the way. So let me show you how that looks. When I go to the sewing machine, my double stick tape is in place with the paper on it still. What I do is I fold over one edge and begin sewing. As I approach the area with the double stick tape, I peel off the tape paper, and you can see through that. So if you're a little bit off your line, you can still use the line to guide you. I fold down the material so that it meets that line that I drew. Now remember, this is stitched down, but as you approach here, see it has that nice folded corner in it caused by the double stick tape going past the dots drawn on your fabric. And then all you have to do is fold the beveled corner in place. So you come and stitch, then you stitch down this, back up again, and continue on. I just want to say the amount of the contrasting fabric can vary depending on how much you need. This one needed a lot wider strip of fabric to help span the gap between where my piecework ended and my border started covering the raw edges. So it looks good even if it's thin, or it can look good if it's thick, whatever works. I'm going to show you how it looks to sew the sashes at the final step of the table runner. I'm going to use a stitch length of 4, and I'm going to pull my bobbin thread up so that there are no strings that get caught in my stitching as I sew. Normally I have a walking foot on my machine, but I have an open toe foot so you can see as much as possible. You can use a larger than regular stitch length because this quilt sashing is completely finished and there's no chance a raw edge will peek out when you're finished. I usually use a stitch length of 4. I haven't removed the top tape of my basting tape until I approach the area that I'm going to flip under. And when you sew this particular beveled edge and it's connected to an existing edge that's already been stitched, this one corner here is actually dictated by the previous beveled edge. So you try and pay attention to the line you drew down at this side, but this beveled edge determines the center point where the fabric will be flipped. Pay attention to this edge. It's completely turned under, and as I sew, you'll see that it's the tape extending past the dots that we drew on the fabric before. That is causing that to roll under nicely and create a finished edge. You may have noticed a few minutes ago I pulled this raw edge out because I want the raw edge to be available to sit underneath this as much as possible. I just want this little corner turned under for sure.